Hey everybody! Laura A. Grace here, and we are continuing our series with special guests. As you guys can see, I have another special guest, and I'm super duper excited. She's one of my best friends, and guys, she is just doing so many amazing and crazy things behind the scenes. And so, with that said, I am going to introduce Noelle Nichols. Say Noelle!
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you. I am so excited for us to talk about your manga, and I forgot to mention, guys, that this week is sort of like the artist edition, because Noelle actually illustrated her manga. Like, she script wrote it, storyboarded it, illustrated it, and soon to be published it. But first, can you introduce yourself to us, Noelle?
Yeah, so I am Noelle, and I'm an artist author. I write mostly Asian-inspired fiction, and my thing is kind of really liking samurais and just like that strong sense of morals. And that's pretty short, but that's who I am.
Guys, totally check out her Shadows Creed saga. It's really, really good. Fam Summit just released just 2 weeks ago. Basically at the end of January. There we go. So whenever that was. Now, are you able to tell us your top 3 favorite anime or manga? Are you able to successfully do that? With just 3.
I'm gonna cheat, as I do whenever you ask me things. I always like to stretch. I I just gotta fit one more in there. So I'm gonna go for Mushishi, both the anime and manga. They're amazing. I'm gonna go for Rurouni Kenshin.
Yes.
And I'm going to stick in Vagabond next to Rurouni Kenshin because it's also an excellent samurai manga. It's probably one of the most true to like the Bushido kind of thing. And then as my wild card, I'm going to stick in March Comes In Like a Lion. And that is just an anime until one day they bring the manga to the US, which I hope they will.
Yeah, I hope that they do. So, a minor brief thing. Kuroko's Basketball just came on Netflix, and March Comes In Like a Lion's on Netflix, right, too?
Mm-hmm.
But Kuroko's Basketball does not have the anime available for, purchase anywhere. So, since both of these have been on Netflix, they should have anime and manga. I'm just going to throw that out there. So,
make it happen.
Go do it. Even though I realize that's outside of their control. But anyway, that was awesome. That was a good wild card, by the way. That was really good. So we mentioned your manga. Are you willing to share a little bit about it and I guess what you do?
Yeah, so Respire is set in the same world as my fantasy novels. It's going back in the day, so we kind of get to see how this magic kind of plays in with these main characters. But at the heart of it, it's mostly a story about Aya, whose father is kind of like the leader of this village, and she's kind of helping him out because he kind of has this sickness from the magic, and she wants to help him out, so she kind of goes on a little bit of a journey as she goes to help her father out, and then as of course stuff happens as it does, and we're introduced to her and her world and kind of her best friend, and it's just a really nice little one shot that's really happy but has that central friendship and family core to it.
Yes, it's very good, guys. Just to throw that out there. Very, very good. Now, I admit, so since we're talking about the illustration process, I have no clue about this part because I just give that over to my personal illustrator. But for your process, did you draw your characters sort of before you started the actual, I guess, past the storyboarding or the storyboarding process, or did you have draw your characters sort of as you were doing the paneling and such?
So, I actually drew them before. I brought props. I brought pictures.
They're colored. They're colored.
Yes. So the first thing I did is when I was drawing the characters is I drew full body poses of all the characters just to kind of design their costumes and stuff. And I wanted to get a base color down, even though, manga is black and white. I just wanted to make sure that I got the sense of their character, their world and everything. And then as I was drawing it, I realized that wasn't enough because I was doing Respire on a 4-month time frame because I was entering it into the Shonen Jump manga competition and I'd never done it before. So I was like, great, how am I going to shortcut this enough so I can start? So then I tried to skip this step. Don't skip this step. It's very important. But I did, these are called these are character turnarounds. Okay. But these are specifically just the face, because you would think I thought this, and I felt a little bad at first, but like if you draw your characters trying to draw them like exactly the same way in all the panels,
Yeah.
it's hard to do that.
Really?
I was like, I created these characters. Like I can just draw them
Yeah,
again and again, but no. So you draw these things to help you, and normally you would do like different facial expressions so that you can like capture who they are and then repeatedly draw them. So over time it got easier for me to draw them like off the first try, but for the first few pages, maybe even like honestly I think like half of the pages I was like referring to this. I was like, okay, her eyeball is like this far apart from the nose, this far apart from the bottom. So it's really helpful to have those. And so yeah, I drew them before, and it was very helpful to have like just that solid picture of who the characters were.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if you had that up as a reference when you were drawing.
Mhm.
Did you do that with their clothing as well too, or like just their facial
I
portraits?
did both. It was mostly the face for me that I had a problem with drawing. But if I did have a full body, I tried to cut down on how many times I had to draw full body poses. I was like, I don't have time to. So I was like, let me just do like, body, which made it a lot easier. But you can actually stick the references in a window like on the screen, and you can actually like flip them so they're even like facing the same way, which was really helpful. So yeah, it was just easier for me to keep the costume in my head than it was like the exact positioning of like eyeballs and stuff.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So then you did the whole series digitally then. Did you do anything like hand drawn, I guess?
I did like thumbnail drawings before. It was like before my storyboarding, which honestly was really dumb. It didn't work out as well as I planned it. So I drew like the storyboard like really small just to get like the paneling down, and then I did like a super brief sketch. But then when I turned it digital, like I was intending to actually, trace out the panels, and there's my storyboard. But like nothing was really flowing well. So I ended up having to redo a lot of them digitally, and I was like, I just wasted all that time drawing it on hand. But I think that might have also been just because it was so new to me that maybe it didn't work as well, but I probably still would do it digitally. It's just so much easier to like be like, this panel's not working, I'm going to like, change it. You can like squish the different panels to like shrink them to be a different size and everything. And it's so much easier than let me erase this entire page. And even if you like cut it and paste it with tape, which is something I do, it's so much easier digitally.
That sounds like so much easier. And I was going to ask, so talking about the flow of the paneling, and you mentioned that you were doing this for the first time, what made you feel like the flow was working when you were drawing?
I'd say it's just like when your eye would lead across the page and would kind of like follow the action, because there were some points when I would go from this moment in time to this moment and it was like too big of a jump and it seemed to like jarring. So I think a lot of that probably just comes from like a lot of, manga artists, they read a lot of manga and comics. You're kind of like have a fluency, so to speak, of like how to read it. So that helped a lot. But I ran into a lot of things where it's like I wanted to feature a panel, so I'd pick one panel that was kind of like my key panel per page, and then I would kind of move the panels around it to like lead up to it. Like if we are seeing Aya falling off a cliff, you'd want to lead up the page to when she was about to fall and then cut to the next page to like build tension. Yeah. So that was interesting. There was a lot of like playing around, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like this weird visual sense of building tension that was new to me, and it was fun to play around with. Yeah.
And so did you feel that was sort of almost for every like page or 2-page spread, not just the whole manga itself?
Yeah, it was more nuanced. It was definitely by page. It's like, okay, what's the focus of this page? How many little things do I want to have? So I can, of course, I was also working with a page limit because I could only do 55 pages max. So I had to fit it into that. But then again, I think a lot of mangaka, they do have like 55 pages per chapter, I would want to say. So they probably have about the same constraints as opposed to let's just make this thing go on forever. So yeah. It was interesting how detailed it was. Like you wouldn't imagine that until you're in the weeds of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel, you mentioned, the fluency of manga. Do you feel like yours has grown since actually writing a manga?
Yeah, that's definitely, it's one of the things where it's like, okay, I've seen it done, but now I need to do it myself. It's like with anything, like, you can see somebody ride a bike, but until you've done it yourself, it's like, I don't understand exactly how the pieces fit. So
Right.
it's really through, like, I feel like I got better throughout it. Like, the beginning's a little bit rougher, and I did go back and try to fix the stuff at the beginning. Like, I did a whole page, and, like, I redid it. I was like, I don't really have time, but I need to, because it's not flowing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely experience helps get you better at that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, from my understanding, you wrote this as like a short story and then you did like a script writing and storyboarding. What was it like seeing your characters come to life, so to speak, on page in this way?
It was weird.
Really?
It was so weird because it's like I'm used to having, like I have an image in my head when I'm writing a story, and to see them actually on the page and drawing what was in my head was it was like a really surreal experience for me, especially since I was the one drawing it. It's like, this is literally out of my head and exactly how I'm seeing it, like barring any like, oh, I can't draw this pose from like looking down on a cliff, and that was frustrating, It's like, I have this scene, but I can't draw it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was weird, but it was a different kind of satisfaction than writing it, because that's more up to like the reader's imagination, and this is more, here's what's in my brain, enjoy it. So it's just kind of like a weird parallel.
Yeah. Do you find now, since writing your manga, like when you're doing, I guess, novel writing, have you caught yourself at all trying to turn it into like a manga of sorts when you're drawing? Yeah.
There's definitely scenes, like even before it though, like since I watched so much anime and manga, like there's definitely like, and I'm also an editor, a video editor, so like I see things with like cuts in them. So even when I'm writing, like I know there was specifically a scene when Kilo was fighting or something, like in my brain I could see his foot like moving forward across the ground, and so that was like a scene which would then be like a panel in a manga, but I'm still like seeing it as like this film. Cattail.
That is really, really awesome. Do you feel like there's ever maybe like a struggle between the forms of you personally writing novels and manga?
Like, what do you mean? Like, what sense of?
I guess maybe like with storytelling, in that novel writing, you do much more descriptions so that the reader can visualize it themselves, compared to, like I said, you're providing an image for the reader to actually see. Like, does that ever get maybe like confusing? If, like, I think of myself of getting excited when I'm writing and sometimes failing to do one or the other, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd say that with writing, I feel like it's more intimate for me to write than it is for me to draw, just because drawing, I feel like I'm having to be very intentional with what I'm doing, because I'm trying to get like a specific like emotion or even just like a scene like specifically there how I want it, as opposed to writing where it's a little bit more, you're like feeding small details, so it's like the reader is filling in those details for you. So it's harder for me to do the drawing because I'm more keen on being like, okay, I want this to happen, I want them to see this and to experience this, as opposed to writing where it's more like, here's some idea of what's happening. So it's a little bit more freeing.
That makes sense. Now, do you feel like when you're, because one thing that I think, I'm not sure who mentioned it to me, but that having more descriptions is helpful than having, how I've done, having the bare minimum, to be honest. I struggle writing those. But did you feel like that made maybe the manga process a little bit easier when you went to go draw those, having that extra description there?
Yes. I think it's when you're dealing with like something from my head as opposed to something that would be in your head, saying it to like an illustrator, I think there's a really big difference, because I was like, my short story is a lot more sparse than how I would normally write a novel, just because it was already like all the details were in my head. But if I were to write something for an illustrator, I think it would be helpful, especially if you have like a specific sort of vision, like just even saying like the clouds, like it was a cloudy day, if you're trying to create like an emotion of like it like being sad, like that there's a scene going on, you have it like raining or something. If you have like that sense of emotion, I think it'd be helpful to tell your illustrator, because they don't really know like what the emotion or the feeling that you really want to evoke. Like they might have their own completely different feeling than what you want. So I think if you have something intentional you want to do, more details would be better to tell your illustrator.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for those working with an illustrator, like what advice would you give to them so that they can help best serve their illustrator in that whole illustrating process?
I would probably be upfront about how much creative freedom they have, because that's something that of the little commission work I've done, I've always wanted to know, like, do you want it like exactly how you want this in your head, or is it more like I don't really know what I want, so it's kind of like up to interpretation? I think that's something that I would really work with an illustrator, because it's like even just working with editors with my writing, there's some editors that like have the same vision that I have, and so I imagine it's sort of the same thing. It's like some illustrators would be able to be on the same page and others might need more direction, as opposed to, like this person's trying to change, like the story I'm trying to tell, which is something you don't want to do. So I think it's just good to have that open conversation about, okay, like I'm trying to get this exact point across, even on like this exact scene. Like I want this to be epic, so can we like lead up to it and then like give them details, kind of, if that makes sense.
That definitely does. And I think that's a good point, because there is a scene that was in my manga, and when I got the line art from my illustrator, it was very much different than what I had imagined. And I did realize that, hey, I failed to give enough information of what I was seeing, but I definitely didn't want the scene that they had imagined in that, not because it was bad, but because it didn't fit what I had envisioned. So I think that's like really awesome that you say that, because I think that is an important thing, because I know I have been fairly vocal with some of my, like when I've shared about some of the illustrators I've worked with for like just small art pieces, that I welcome their feedback, because sometimes they can give advice or input that's different because they're familiar with the illustration process compared to what I do. But that's a really, really good point. So since you illustrated your manga, I would love to hear anything you would want to share, like just about your process. I mean, if there's like just one thing or the whole thing, I ask that you invite us onto how your illustrating journey was.
Yeah, so it's like mine, like all of my, like even my novel writing is just like, it's kind of like all over the place, but that's kind of just like my thing. So my process was really to get the story down. I think the story and the characters were the most important to me, just because like that's the most important part of a manga to me, would be like the story and the characters, and I want like what I'm trying to say, and then that kind of helps lead me into creating like the visuals. But it's like I never try to do anything perfect the first time. Like I always make sure that everything is rough. Like even when I was storyboarding, I did multiple passes, which I'm not sure is really like, it's bad in the sense that you're wasting time because you're not as efficient, but it's good if you're trying to learn. So I tried to be very patient with myself. I was like, give yourself grace to learn this new process. You've never done it before. I went through like with the storyboards and I roughed everything, and like everything was super rough. Like you could barely even tell what character was which. And then I would go through and refine it a little bit more and be like, okay, I like this expression, I like this pose. And then I would finally go in with like the line art and commit. I had to commit to the pose. Like, okay, I only have this much time. It's like I finally need to commit. So then I actually committed to the line art, and then I had to decide like, how I wanted to do the toning, which again, I had no idea how to do. So that was fun figuring that out in like 6 hours. Yeah, it was stressful. It was fun. It was so much fun doing it though on that timeline, because one thing I've learned about my brain is like if I think about something too much, like I freeze and I get too nervous and I can't do anything. Yeah. So it's actually better that I had that timeline of like by the time I started drawing, I had 2 months left to finish drawing 51 pages. So that kept the momentum of like, okay, we let go of perfect. Perfect's never going to happen. Let's try, let's just see where we can go and kind of explore. And I think that really is mostly how I kind of do like any of my process. It's not really a detailed process, but that's my theory. That's my experimentation of just, like the first thing is never going to be perfect. And it's just like fun to dig in and be like, okay, we're going to make this panel really good. We're going to make this drawing really good. We're going to make like this chapter really good. And I just like that sense of play and I guess experimentation.
Yeah. So when you were doing that and you're in those rough stages, were there moments where you're just like, I really hate this panel, I'm just going to throw it out? But did you do that? Or did you just like, we're just like that we were talking about, it's not going to be perfect and just keep going? Like, what did you do in those situations?
I did delete pages. Which you should probably have figured out. I did delete entire pages. At some point, though, I had to come with terms with, okay, I have this much time left. I only have this many things I can do. So I did kind of have to be like, I like this page the best. This is my page I really am proud of, so I'm going to work really hard on this. And then there's like some other pages and panels that are kind of iffy, but it's like you can only, at some point, like you have to let go. And I've watched enough interviews of like these are actually really good. There's like, what is it called? Monben, I believe. It's actually like a documentary of a mangaka, I forgot what his name is, in Japan, who goes around interviewing all the other ones, and he records their process and like actual like in their studio, like how they're doing things, and then they actually talk about it, and he like learns. Like there's this one person who legitimately, it blows my mind, he draws in pen, he doesn't storyboard or sketch, and he uses whiteout to erase, and it's by the end of it, it's so caked with whiteout and pen. And I was like, what? I was I can't believe he did that. It's just like at some point, you know, everyone has their own process. You have to like learn to, and they're even still upset about. They're like, it went to the final printer because they have deadlines, and he's like, I still hate that panel, but you know, you can only do so much. That's the hard part about being an artist. You're never satisfied.
Yeah. Well, do you feel satisfied overall with the work in your manga that you have done?
She's putting me on the spot. It's hard. Like I am, because you kind of have to like separate into how I'm gonna like frame this. For the time frame I had for my very first attempt at doing it, it's incredible what I was able to do, considering that like I'd never designed characters before. Like I never really studied anatomy. I'm working on that. I have a course to do that. But like I've never done all these things. So what I was able to do, like I'm really proud of it. Like I like my backgrounds. There's some pages and some expressions like I really nailed. And then there's also always going to be like, man, I wish I could have done this better. It was like I wish I could have drawn this panel better, this expression better, this sentence even. I was like, I wish I would have wrote that sentence better. But yeah, no, overall I'm really proud of it. It's just, it's hard because we as artists and creative people just always want to do better. So it's hard even like showing people like, here's what I did last summer as opposed to here's what I did now. So it's hard. I don't have a solution, but I try to be proud of what I've done.
Yeah. Okay, you mentioned the background, and one thing when I got to read your manga early that I just absolutely loved is your attention to backgrounds in general, because I feel like with most manga, like you say, you're focusing on the characters, you're focusing on the dialogue, you're usually not necessarily paying attention to what's behind those said characters, but you had this really amazing way of weaving everything together where you want to pay attention to those backgrounds. What is, I guess, I don't know if maybe advice is the right word, but how could others bring that same awareness to their surroundings of their characters, do you think? Even if it's, I mean, I know nature plays a big role in your story, but I feel like just in general, because those are some of my personal favorite panels that you've had. And I'm just like, I think we need more manga that has this like epic nature focus weaved into the story itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from, part of it's a reluctance that a lot of people really do like drawing the characters more than they like drawing the background. I like drawing the backgrounds more than characters personally, but I think I also understand that the backgrounds are able to tell their own story. And they're not just there to look pretty and to fill the space. I mean, they can, you know, like, even just, like, the subtle way that you would have, like, the sun coming down, or, like, the subtle way, like, even just, like, framing the composition of, like, the trees going like this and the character down here is, like, that's going to make the character, you know, seem smaller in this world. It's going to be a little bit more, like, humbling. So that's always been something that I've liked about background, is that it's more than just drawing trees. As much as I love drawing trees, it's like purposeful because you're trying to like convey a sense of scale or like an emotion. So more people should pay attention to the background because it's important too.
Yeah. And were there any manga that inspired for that, or was that just something purely that was just you, that you like having that woven in?
It's like Mushishi is probably, the backgrounds in that is just as important. It also is another story where nature is important, so they might have the same sense of like how important backgrounds are. But the backgrounds in Mushishi and Vagabond, even Vagabond, when the backgrounds aren't really, they're incredible, but the focus is more on the internal conflict of Miyamoto Musashi as opposed to the backgrounds, but how he's able to use the backgrounds to convey like the mood Oh, it's so good. It's so good how he's able to do it, and it's like so flawlessly interwoven with how he does it. It's so good. It's like that's my that's the mangaka I would like to aspire to be, just because he's incredible. But that's a lot of work to get to his level. Not that I want to be him, but you know, you get it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Do you feel, since before your manga is published, that you will go back and refine any of those pages so that you're like, I am 100% happy as you can be with those said pages?
Oh, Laura's digging for the gold in this interview. Man, because what I was doing before this interview was I was looking at it for like 2 hours. I was kind of like going through and I was printing out, like this pages and stuff. It's hard for me to want to really change it because I do feel a sense of pride that like this is what I did in that span of time last summer. There are a few things where like I did actually forget to like tone certain things, and like I forgot to draw a leg in one of the panels. Really? I was like, yes. I was like, how did I forget to draw like a leg connecting to the ground? So like those little things I'll probably fix. But it's like I have such a sense of, I was like, I want to leave a mark on where I've been, and I still want to go forward. So like I'd rather spend the time on something new than go back and fix this. So I think I'm just gonna leave it how it is. Oh, it just tears me up.
It's so good though. It's so good. I mean, I feel like I'm not drawing my manga, but there really is this just significance of, or amount of awe that, wow, somebody did this, and I'm paying somebody to do that, but you did it yourself. And I think that's just such a dream come true for many people. I think, not many of us can say, hey, I drew my own story, and it looks good. It doesn't look like stick figures, which mine would be. So I think it's funny you mentioned missing a leg. I want to be like, you can say you made it, because I feel like we see these things like there. I know there's a scene, I know it's in the anime, but for Haiku, where like Kageyama is on the wrong side of the net. These are big things. So you totally have made it.
Right. It's like I'm doggedly persistent. That's my one good trait, because there were many times in this when it's like I honestly didn't know if I could do it because I'd never done it before. I was like, this is so hard, like trying to like imagine and have the things flow. But again, it's like I'm not a quitter, doggedly persistent. Like you don't even know how many times I erase some of these drawings. Like I want to say like 2 or 3 hours, like not even kidding, on like one of these poses. So it takes a lot of persistence to not give up, and a lot of willpower. So that's my inspirational stick I just had to get in there.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I totally agree. Do you feel anything changed from the time that you did the script writing or loose script write to the actual like finalizing the details and such? Yeah.
There was things that I changed from the story and everything that I didn't write, that I added just because I thought it was fun. Yeah. So that was an interesting development when I was going through the whole process, to be like, oh, I have a sense of play, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is fun, so I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah. I meant to ask that earlier, by the way, and I completely forgot. So sorry. It's at the end. I just think that's so amazing, and I just love that you really seem to encourage just having fun and just playing with it, even if you're like, I'm completely lost, but let's just keep playing to see where this goes, because that seems, even if it is a stressful experience, that it also has a fun element to it as well, that hopefully takes off some of that stress, though, from it being like super stressful. Despite the deadline, I go to see how was that entering into this contest? Do you feel if you didn't have it, things would have been different?
I probably would have. Honestly, I probably would have never done it, which is weird to say, because I had always, like, the manga that I wanted to draw was more of, like, it's more like Mushishi, where it was episodic, more nature-based, more, like, adventure-y, and this one, honestly, I was like, I wanted to try drawing something that was more shonen, because it was Shonen Jump's contest, so I wanted to have, like, a main character that was more shonen worthy. So it's like I feel like Aya came out of that because she does possess like the personality of like a shonen protagonist. So without that contest, I think I would have kept putting it off and just being like, well, I was like, I'll get to it, because I kept thinking, I was like, I'm not a good enough drawer to actually do this. I was like, I don't know how to draw 51 pages. And then it's like that sense of challenge that's like always there. I was like, if you just challenge me, I'll do things I'll never think I would do. So without that contest, I don't think this story would have happened.
Well, that's exciting. I'm glad then that there was the contest. And I'm glad that you entered because, I mean, that is very prestigious. And I guess, is there anything else that you would like to share concerning like finalizing those details in the illustration process?
I would say to maybe try walking away from it for a little bit, because it's one of the things where it's like I learned it a lot from art school, where you're so obsessed and you're like hunching over and like you're really close to it that you can't really like step back and see the big picture. So it's like it's always important, I think, to step back, even just like looking at a page, but also looking at the project as like a whole, because you can have like the nuances of each individual page, but then it's also how does everything like lead into each other. And I think that's where a lot of people would tend to stop, is before that step. They wouldn't go back to like maybe add an extra highlight here or like erase an outline, and those small little details can really take it from looking like I want to say sterile, that's kind of a weird term to use, but like very polished maybe, and you can kind of add a bit more like personality by going through with those final details. And I think those are the most rewarding things, because I remember drawing my cover, like when I just added like a little bit of highlight to the hair or like to the shoulder, and I was like, it just pops. I was like, it's amazing, I'm so good at drawing. Yeah. So it's like those little things, like do like the little guilty pleasure things. You spend all this time, like don't be in such a rush to be like, publish it, get it done, go away, like be done with it. Just like spend a little time with it to like, okay, I'm going to make this nice little highlight here, because I think the attention to detail, I think it pays off. And I think it's good for the artist, and I think it's good for the reader.
That's awesome. And so when are you hoping or planning to publish this so everybody else can read it? And I'll read it again too, but still, I'm sure everybody would like to read it too.
I think what is it? The end of spring, early summer, I think is the plan. So need to start getting the proof copies and figuring out how to format a manga. That's the next thing. Yeah. Like, how do you actually get this published in a book? I hope it's not difficult.
I know, that's right. That's like one of the things. That was actually a huge reason why I wanted to do this series, is because I was like, nobody teaches you how to format a manga. It's like, I have no idea, but it's like, hopefully we can figure it out and share that with other people, so that like the great mystery has been solved. Because like I can imagine it will be a really moving experience to be able to physically hold your manga. Mm-hmm. I know that's something I really, really look forward to. We should celebrate with some glitter in our lives.
The glitter and the balloons and the cupcakes. I just want to go on a mountain, Laura. I just want to live on a mountain and have no one bother me.
I'll go just send you a UPS box of just glitter. Like, here you go. That said, where can we connect with you and find out just more about your books and just be able to follow you online?
So the first place, you can check out my website. It's just noellenichols.com. That has links to all my social media, but I'm Noelle Nichols everywhere. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Those are the two I mostly am most active about.
Awesome. And where can we get your books that are out, the Shadows Creed Saga?
They are on Amazon currently. Shadow's Hand is wide, but Phantom's Lament is just on Amazon now, and Respire probably will just be on Amazon for a while too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Noelle, for like just sharing your illustration process. It was really fascinating, and I just love hearing, just you sharing about it. It was really, really awesome. So thank you for sort of debunking some of the mysterious process of illustrating, and what I know from you, what my illustrator is doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for letting me ramble. Tried to rein in my tangents a bit, and it was fun hanging out with you and just kind of getting to share my side of creating manga.
Well, thank you. I know we are definitely super excited to get your manga, so we will be definitely keeping an eye on that.
Yay!
Well, thanks again, and we will talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Noelle. I just loved hearing about her process. I feel like it debunks some things that maybe what my illustrator has been doing, and I hope that it was really informative and enjoyable to you. Definitely tune in to next week because I am interviewing a manga creator who actually has published his manga, and he's going to be sharing some things that he experienced and he went through after his publication and during that. So definitely stay tuned for that next week, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!